Trish, I think you're leading tonight.
We ready to call the meeting to order?
Yes.
Or is that just like optional?
That's optional, but if you'd like to, you're welcome to. Trish, I think you're
I'd
leading
like
tonight.
to call to order ready to call the meeting July 8th, 2021 of the Shade Tree Commission.
That's optional, but if you'd like to, you're welcome to. Trish, I think you're
I'd
leading
like
tonight.
to call to,
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
okay, so can we have a roll call? John Rice,
Present.
Carol,
Here.
Rob,
Here.
Tom, absent, Trish is here. All right, so let's have a moment of silence. Shall we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, so the agenda, do we have any additions or changes to the agenda?
Did you say you did?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so we had received a couple of emails from Paul, and I'm sorry, Paul.
Seligson.
Thank you, Sally. Requesting consideration of some questions that he had from the New Town in Bloom. And Tom had those emails, and he had a question actually for Tom. So Tom had a question of Paul about one of his requests. So if you give me a moment, let me pull up that email. I think it had to do with he would like to see two recommendations. One is planting of some street trees along, I believe, Westchester Pike. And then the other is a recommendation from the board on what trees to have at the pop-up garden or the pop-up market.
He wants to, Paul to Tom, it says, as co-chair of the Gather in the Circle, we are thinking of adding a second pop-up park toward the middle of September, suggesting 5 native trees for Newtown Square residents to consider planting and adding to their private gardens. Could you please tell me which of the Shade Tree Commissions would be top 5? We would like members of the Shade Tree Commission to be involved in the promotion and installation with us if possible. And then there was something about 31 locations for street trees along downtown Westchester Pike.
So Tom did not see, so do we want to, so before I guess we go into discussion, will we go ahead and want to add that to the agenda under new business?
If I can,
Sure.
I'm playing both sides here.
Please do.
I'll run over here because it's the only way the camera sets up. So a couple real quick things. Yeah, we would want to add it to the agenda. I just want to let you know that starting next month, you would not be able to add this to the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, so the state has passed a law that for public meetings and any public meeting that is any kind of a decision and your board is making decisions or recommendations as part of our agency, whatever is basically on the agenda on the night when you come in, and for the public to come in, they can get the agenda and they can do that. It would be kind of required. Tonight, we're still okay. That law doesn't go into effect till August 2nd. So you're kind of under the wire. But I think just so everybody knows, I just think it's important. We're going to get out some information to all of the committees, letting them understand and know what it's all about and how that's working. I will be actually discussing it much more in length with the board of supervisors on Monday night. I just got the information on it last week or early this week. I kind of lost track of what day it is, but I did get the information about it, and I've had a full discussion with our attorney. So unless it would be considered de minimis, basically you could make a decision or deliberate about it on the night that it just came up. We have to have at least 24 hours in advance. So I'm sharing that with you. Two reasons. One is if that comes to play as we keep moving forward, that if you come up with something, the good news is this committee meets during the week and it's not over the weekend. So the 24 hours is actually Wednesday instead of, or night is Thursday, right? Yeah, it's Wednesday instead of, that. So we could do it as long as you get the information to us ahead of time. So I just want to make sure that everybody kind of understands that and knows that. Okay.
With respect to those, I think for the pop-up park, I think that one might be pretty,
We're just adding it to the agenda
we're
now.
just adding it to the,
So we're agreeing to
Okay.
add,
yes.
right?
So we have a motion to add Paul's requests to the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Who made the motion? I'm sorry.
Carol.
Was there a second?
Well, I made the motion, Carol
I,
seconded.
okay, it's a
There we go.
motion,
That's
okay,
good.
I was the second. Okay, Trish made the original motion. Correct, don't need confusion.
I love it.
All right. And the next agenda items is consider approving.
No, there's a second.
Oops, sorry.
Just so you understand, you've approved adding those two things to the agenda, but you haven't approved the whole agenda, so you probably should approve the whole agenda and then go to your next.
Thank you. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Nope, thank you for correcting the procedure. So would someone like to make a motion to accept the agenda?
I so move.
Have a second?
Second.
John made the motion and Rob seconded. All right, so the motion passed.
No, we vote.
Oh, we all did, didn't
Yeah.
we? All right.
You
I
are.
have a. This is worse than I thought. All right, so.
It is the favorite vote.
So all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Yeah.
All right. All right, we got that far. All right. Now we have the same thing for the minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I dropped my pen. All right. All right, do I have a motion to consider approving the minutes from May 13th, 2021 meeting?
I so move.
All right, we have a first. Do we have a second?
Second.
Rob seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Do we have any presentations today? So we have, our next agenda item is approving two items, 7.1, which is to approve the permits for 6 trees along Goshen Road. It's the Eagle Scout project. This is carryover from our last meeting on May 13th, 2021. I have a motion to approve.
Do we know when they were doing it, or have they done it, or?
Still trees planted. Weren't you there?
No, that was Arbor Day. This was the second planting.
There's been some trees planted along there.
I don't know when this Eagle Scout is wanting to do. Sorry.
You're gonna get a lot of.
Don't you have one of those big selfie sticks?
I don't know when the Eagle Scout is, was planning on doing this. I would assume he hasn't done it yet because he really did need this permit before we move forward. And it doesn't say that you're ratifying it, so I do not think it has happened already, but I would think that he's probably going to want to try to do it. Usually, probably like you said, September. Eagle Scouts are want to get on top of their projects pretty quickly, so.
These were some of the trees that had been, that are in the township nursery or something?
I believe that's correct for this plan.
So do we have any discussion?
On green side up?
Yeah, they're all approved trees, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I would request that you ask for the date of planting, so one of us can just stop by just to make sure everything's getting
That'd be
done
nice, yeah.
correctly.
Is there anything else you suggest?
I mean, we should probably know the species that he's going to plant, species and date, and then one of us can stop by and just make sure everything is following our vision.
So would we approve that permit then condition upon those
That
items
information being shared back with you so that one of you can be available.
right? So do I have a motion to accept or to approve the permit for the 6 trees to be planted along Goshen Road contingent upon the following information being provided to the Shade Tree Commission, which is the date of the planting and the species that are planned to be planted?
I move.
All right, so I have a first. Do we have a second?
No section.
All right, John seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Who's our first? Great, so the next agenda item is the grant for 100 trees to be planted across from the township building. This was also another item that we discussed and was carried over from our May 13th meeting. And I can't recall, did we have some discussion or were we expecting to get some additional information about that before we approve the permit? Or are we good to go?
You're on the corner, which is across from the park, or like on the person's house. That's the other
I'm
deal.
trying to remember, and
All I have is grant for 100 trees across from township building. What do we need? Planting of trees, volunteers, third party, guidance, get more information.
And I believe somebody contacted me, and I can't remember the gentleman's name. Then I got her in touch with a landscape architect who was going to help plot it out on a plan. I'm not sure where it went from there.
So do we feel that we're ready to go ahead and approve that based on limited information that we have? And we can maybe on that as well as far as planted and see, or do we need to see?
I think we need to, at a minimum, see the species list, the palette, and to make sure that they have support from us. So make sure that we're there. Obviously, that'll probably most likely be a Saturday, Sunday project.
Who's gonna, that's a lot of trees. Who's gonna?
That I do not know.
I think a lot of those trees are going to be planted by volunteers from the EAC. And I think they probably will be honest with you, they'll probably be reaching out to your group as well to come and help. My understanding is that most of these trees are smaller in nature. They're not as large as some of the bare root trees that we've done in the past. That's why.
They just whips or something?
Yeah, probably whips. Who's the gentleman that runs the EAC?
Bruce,
Maybe it was Bruce that contacted me, maybe. So species list, dates, and that we're contacted for support as a support vehicle for this project.
Are they gonna put wire around the trees if they're little bitty?
I'm sure if they're planning this, if they're doing the whips, they have to do the tubex to protect them from the deer and mechanical damage.
Yeah, they'll
They'll say it's a
Destroy
buffet,
it.
yeah.
So we have a motion to approve the permit for the grant for 100 trees to be planted across from the township building adjacent to Ellis Avenue, right? Just
Well, we don't have any money, do we? We don't have any money to grant, right?
the EAC
No, it's a grant.
Oh,
They're getting a grant.
they're getting a grant.
They have paid a grant.
Yes.
Oh, I thought we were approving the grant.
you're actually approving the permit
Yeah, we're approving
Approving
the
the permit.
permit,
to
For
plant
them.
the trees.
Conditional on seeing what the
the species list is,
date and species.
the date in which they propose to be planted, and to request the support from the Shade Tree Commission. We're just volunteering.
And I would,
I don't know that we do that.
I would think that you also probably want to make sure that at some point, at least one of the members of the Shade Tree Commission has seen the plan
Okay.
that's being planted, or maybe even ask that John would be review it, make sure that he doesn't have any concerns, and as long as he doesn't have any concerns, it doesn't have to come back to you. If he has concerns, then it should come back to you.
Okay. So, all
Excellent.
right, so I will amend. So do we have a motion to issue or approve the permit for 100 trees to be planted across from the township building adjacent to Ellis Avenue, contingent upon providing ours a species list of the trees to be planted, the date in which to be planted? The Shade Tree Commission is contacted for it, and that the planting plan be reviewed by the township arborist.
Correct.
Do I have a first? Sure. Carol's first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Motion passes.
I said aye. I said aye.
We all said aye.
I'm-
Unanimous.
No, I'm on the second.
I seconded.
I was just
So I
making sure.
figured mine would be an aye, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Would second if I wasn't going to say yes, right?
Now it's time to open the floor to public comment. Okay, seeing none. Have any comments from the commission? All right, do we have any new business?
I would think your new business is the information that you added from Paul.
Right, so Paul is requesting a suggestion for 5 trees to present to show residents to what to consider planting at the pop-up park proposed for September 14th. Do we have any thoughts on what you all would like to see?
If I may give you just a little bit of background, how this is going to be, what we're hoping that's going to be set up, and so that you have an idea of what it is that you're, kind of trying to give some examples for and how this is going to work. So there's going to be a pop-up park over at the St. Albans Circle. We're hoping, I think we've got approval of, although we're trying to get, I think, one more parking place. But there's 3 parking places and a green space between Remax, the Remax building, and I believe it's the hair salon, Anthony Sebastian's or something like that, that's over there. There's an area where there's some trees already there, but there's also some green grass. And so they're going to come in with some native plants and put in that area. They want to bring in some benches and make it particularly on the asphalt area where there's these parking places. Bring in some benches, bring in some tables, encourage people to have a place to stop and sit and visit with one another and build community together. And what they thought it would be nice is to have potentially, they're probably going to do a border with the road driveway with some plants. And they also wanted to add these 5 trees, but they wanted it to be trees that people might consider planting in their yards or in their, in the street area. So that's the purpose, so that you understand what you're looking at versus just saying, oh, the people want to plant these trees. It's for the purpose of, encouraging people to gather for community, but also at the same time be informative about native plants and native trees and that kind of.
Are they going to be in pots or are they?
I would, depending obviously on what size we get, I mean, they would like to get them big enough that they are, not necessarily like a bare root tree that you've got to put in a pot and do something with. I mean, it's got to be able to survive being there for a period of time. But it might be like just even a bulb tree, that's propped up and kind of held in place. Hope I said that right, a bald tree. not a tree without any leaves, but a bald tree that would be there, that might be propped up that way, and made straight and that kind of thing. But ideally they'd be in pots, depending on how big what's around the bottom of the tree may determine whether or not it's in a pot or not.
We can't just plant them.
Well, and the goal would be to plant them afterwards. So I think there's 2 phases to this project. One is to have those trees to kind of be as an example. And then the second thing would be is that we would probably plant those trees on township property somewhere. And so that would be the plan, as well, at least that's my understanding.
Where do we get the trees?
Where do we get the trees? I'm not 100% sure where he's planning on getting the trees. I'm sure they'll
But
be.
he's looked into that.
He is looking into that.
When Paul did the 252 planting, he got his trees through Mistardi's
Yeah, I was gonna say the Stardies is often our provider, but
because they're in the.
sometimes he doesn't always have everything that somebody's looking for. So I don't always commit that it's always him, but he's always done a really good job of usually providing us product at cost if it's with the township.
Well, do we want to know do we think we should get 5 different species?
I would think that's
Sure,
kind of the
yeah.
goal.
So I believe we're doing a pop-up garden. We should have at least 1 evergreen, conifer, ornamental, a flowering, and a shade.
Or maybe 2 shades?
Yeah. Yeah. But I believe it's more of an educational type process. So a little bit of variety and, having a diverse palette would be beneficial for the
So if you
education.
got power lines. you put it
Correct.
in that way.
Exactly. So that will be the demonstration, yes.
Each of us should come up with 1 plant and battle it out.
Thinking at this point, I'm fine with what we have on our list. I think that would be the first place to start. So,
And that's what they're looking for, something
Yeah.
from your tree list.
right. So I personally, I'll defer to you guys who are the.
But everything that we would pick should be on our tree list to start with. Um, Flowering wise, I would go with maybe our Cornus Florida, our native dogwood.
Yep.
Likes it around here. Flowering, it comes in different colors. You can choose white or pink.
Will it do okay in full sun?
No, it needs an understory.
It prefers an understory, but most people, if they want it to flower better, they stick it in more sun. But
The thing, Mr. Rice, is most of the varieties or cultivars now are more resistant, so you can still do the American dogwood, but it'd be like a Rutgers variety, which can withstand, more sun reflection.
So how long will the pop-up garden be in place? That might weigh into how hardy. Do we know how long?
yeah, I don't like that idea.
I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I would think that we're probably talking, a week to 2 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, but it's not, we're trying to tie it to two different events. One being they're trying to do a community event at that location. We're potentially closing down like Chapel Road, the one that runs through there for an evening, bringing in some music and having a place for people to mill around and, potentially have some food for people to buy and things like that, but just have a kind of a community event. And so that, I believe, is I want to say, I think it's the 18th of September. I don't have it right in front of me, but hold on a second. Yeah, I think it's Saturday, the 18th that they're aiming for. And then, I might be off, there's a veterans thing at the Drexel Lodge, and one's one weekend and one's the other. So I may have it backwards because I think it's either the 18th or the 25th. And then the following weekend, the 2nd of October, would be when the farmer's market ends. And so they're wanting to have it to kind of bookend those two events.
We're good.
So it would be basically from September 14th then to October 2nd.
Yeah. And then we'll get in there, remove them probably pretty quickly and get them either back to a place where we can give them a little bit better care than being on a parking lot, and then hopefully get them planted very quickly.
Well, they're gonna have to have wood chips or something around them, hay bales or.
Yeah, they'll
hay
do
around
something.
them or
Yeah.
something to keep them.
They should probably be healed in. But they'll
Probably
survive.
wood chips
They'll
are
survive
good.
that time of year.
What's that?
They'll survive that time of year, but they should be healed in. As long as somebody runs over and dumps some water on them every once in a while, we'll be fine.
Every once in a while.
So that could just play into.
Yeah.
and such. So, yeah,
But what about our evergreen selection?
I was thinking durability wise, red cedar, eastern red cedar.
Doing that juniper with some of these other plants is really makes for disease problems.
Are you talking about the crab apples?
Yep. Crab apple is it? Cedar apple rust, cedar hawthorn rust,
Yep.
cedar everything rust. I even have it on my amelanchier.
Yeah.
Oh, amelanchier would be another good flowering tree. That's a good one. Okay, serviceberry for you.
So we have dogwood, serviceberry, red cedar, and then we need to do 2 shades. Do swamp white oak
Yeah, swamp white oak, yeah.
Oak and maple or something?
and black gum to give people some fall color.
That'd be a good one.
Black gum doesn't have the things.
No, that's sweet gum.
That's sweet gum.
Okay, black gum.
Don't try to split
Do
them.
they need a lot of water though, the black gum?
They can take upland and lowland conditions.
And
We'll take anything.
Swamp white oak.
Darkest pie color.
All right, so we have dogwood,
I'm a link here.
red cedar, the serviceberry, swamp white oak, and black gum. List?
Correct.
All right. So, do I have a motion to provide a recommendation on 5 trees to be provided to this part of Newtown and Bloom?
Now, this is part of Gathering the Circle.
Okay. For Gather in the Circle to have their demonstration pop-up garden to highlight the 5 trees that we've selected, which are the
Maybe
dogwood.
we should say recommend in case they
Or
can't get
recommend.
one of them.
Oh, that's a good idea. Do we want to have alternates?
I think they're all readily available.
Are they? Okay.
All right, so we recommend the dogwood, the eastern red cedar, serviceberry, swamp white oak, and black gum.
And I might add, that just for you to consider adding, that if by some chance they were unable to get one of those, that they could get an alternate from our township arborists, and that way you're
Okay,
covered just in case
All right.
we don't have to have another meeting.
That's a good one.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
so I'll amend that to add.
Absolutely. No, it's easy.
And if any of these 5 are unavailable, that Paul may reach out to the township arborist to get a recommendation. Do I have a
Go for it.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The second question that Paul had, I don't feel as if that we have enough information personally to go on, because he just says just planting some trees along Westchester Pike or Chester Pike. And I'm just not sure where he's talking about or for what or what. And the email was pretty unclear, so can we would our recommendation then be then to reach back out to Paul and just to get additional information and invite him to our next meeting in August to decide on that? Would that be the appropriate way to go?
Steve, are they getting planted within the PennDOT right away?
I'm not, I have to be honest, this is the first I'm hearing
Oh,
of
okay,
these
okay, yeah,
trees,
yeah,
so
yeah.
if I had known, I would have at least tried to help get you some other.
No, he
information
needs,
that I
he needs to
didn't need.
provide some information.
Yeah,
I
you
think
need,
all
you need
more.
more.
Yeah.
It says on another matter, I have Google topographical preliminary pinpointing 31 locations for street trees along downtown Westchester Pike. How do you want to proceed in my sharing, looking for funding, deciding on species?
I think what would be, and I don't want to tell you how to do your job as the board, but I think it would be appropriate to say, we need you to come to us with the 31 locations pinpointed, the species that you were hoping to plant, and if you're doing funding, where that funding source is coming from, so that you know what you're approving. And if it's in PennDOT right away, he's also going to have PennDOT approval as part of that. And so, you know, you may even say that that's a condition before you even want to weigh in on it, or you may be willing to say you'll weigh in on it pending PennDOT approval. But, you know, I think there should be a presentation to you of what he's actually trying to do, what he's trying to accomplish, when he wants to plant. You know, I think that some of these things that we need to step back and get these clarifications for you, so that when it comes before you, there's certain things. And it sounds to me like one of the things we need to say is, we need the data planning, we need the types of trees that are going to be planted. I don't know if you want the exact location, but you want location within 5 feet or whatever that is of where it's going to be planted. And, you know, You may even want something that shows the method that's going to be used for planting them, particularly,
Warranties.
you know, particularly if you guys are going to be the ones who are having to, you know, become responsible for some of these trees under your area, you want to, I think you want to have a little bit of say in what's happening, what's going on.
What I'm thinking is, okay, so this whole project with Westchester Pike and these added lanes and this narrow thing, and there was still some of the old trolley tracks down the middle that they pulled up when they redid it. It was really cool to see that. I remember the trolleys. Yeah, I'm that old. But the, this whole thing started before we were organized, or before we even thought about being organized.
Right.
There must have been some plan, some procedures, this is what we want to do, this is the, there must have been some plans initially of what was supposed to happen here. So are we going to be stepping on anybody's toes if we go and do this? Or is Paul Seligson sort of?
Yeah, so I think Paul is looking at, and I believe he's doing this under Newtown Square and Bloom versus, I know it's not tied together in the circle, or it may be through the business association. He wears 3 different hats. So I'm not 100% sure which hat he's wearing to the table for this particular item. I'm assuming it's Newtown Square and Bloom. I'm guessing that probably he's looking, I haven't seen his map, but I would think with 31 trees, it's probably not along necessarily just the area that was widened. It may be further down towards Marple, or it may be further down towards Edgemont, you know, as we're thinking about where 3 goes, particularly in some of the areas because there's not a lot of right-of-way left after the widening. We've kind of pushed up against the edges of the right-of-way that was available for when we did those. There is a developer's plan related to this, to what's happening. So what was done that you see today was obviously done before you became into being as an organization, as our shade tree. There's 2 more phases that are yet to be done. There's a phase that extends down to Boot Road, and there's a phase that extends from where they finished the last time down to Bryn Mawr Avenue. That phase, if there's any tree plantings, you may want to be weighing in on it. You know, we think it would be appropriate from that standpoint. One of the things will be is that all plans like that will be sent to John for review, and so he'll have a chance to.
Just like yesterday, I had the perennial one, yeah.
Yeah. So he received that. One of the things I can tell you is the board has pushed back pretty heavily about any trees being planted in the medians because they're very concerned about safety issues.
PennDOT doesn't allow it.
Yeah, PennDOT doesn't allow it. You know, so there are so those trees that are coming out are not being replaced from the medians with trees. Those are being replaced with more plantings and bushes and things that if a car hits, it's not a death sentence, you know, kind of thing. And so that's the piece of that what's being looked at. And so for the road expansion, I think this is probably looking all the way up and down Westchester Pike at this point. But I haven't seen his paperwork, so I don't know exactly.
So why don't we request that Paul comes in front of us in August? Would that make sense? So that we're all here, we can hear it, and we can ask our questions and make comments and suggestions at that point.
I mean, it'd be nice to see trees there, but if they're not allowed to be put there because.
Well, that's why we got to see where he's going with
I
it.
think that's why we have to see,
Yeah.
you know.
As you point out, I mean, ultimately, any street trees are responsibilities.
And in fairness to Public Works, I mean, they need to, you know, we got to make sure that whoever's doing this project is maintaining them for the first 18 months or whatever, how we're going to hold them to it. Watering, we can't, you know, just pony this off to Public Works and expect them to manage that.
I always wanted to go out and spray tree rings around the cherries. They're getting too close with the mowers.
So who will reach out to Paul then? that's something that we need to do, or?
If somebody sends me his number, I'll reach out to him and have a discussion with him and ask him to come.
I'll send you the email. So
If you could send me the emails, that'd be
Want his
great.
number?
I don't have his number. No, I never met the gentleman. But if you send me the email, I'll introduce myself.
You'd remember if you had.
Yeah. Here, I'll send it to you right now, Joe.
Remember, we're being recorded.
sharing it.
Around the base of the tree. Keep the goddamn weed whackers.
So, okay, all right, great. All right, so then we don't need to make a motion on,
Nope.
on that?
I think that you're giving staff and consultant, direction. We know what to go do.
Okay,
And between the two of us, we'll make sure Paul has all of his marching orders. And I've written down some expectations for all permits that will be shared with you as that comes in. And make sure that if it's not something we collect on the permit information right now, we'll add that to it so that you have it.
yeah, and then it might be a good idea just to remind all that, that we can't give recommendations
Get it?
via email.
Yep.
To individuals, that it has to come formally in front of the whole board. So that would be.
Well, I'm going to be speaking to a lot of our folks over the next 30 days about this change of the agenda piece, because that's actually going to drive a lot of things to be ahead of time and not being brought up on the floor. So we're going to have to work through that.
Is there, this is kind of off topic, but, so when is the latest point that you can make changes to the agenda? Is it 24 hours
He said
ahead? Is that
24
what you're
hours.
saying? Is so that we can make changes up to that point, but once the agenda is set, it's set, and that's the.
Yeah,
agenda
there's a
you have to-
couple exceptions to that.
Mhm.
If it's an emergency,
Yeah.
so I would argue if we found a tree within that 24-hour period that was in danger of falling or something, we could definitely bring that before you right then.
Okay.
So I wouldn't have to, that would be something I could do. But there's certain specific guidelines. We'll be getting those things out to everybody. There is a way that the committee by majority vote can address something if it's, fits into certain categories. And so it's a new law, and usually guidelines are still coming out, like probably for the next 6 months. As we break certain parts of the law, they're saying, okay, now you really shouldn't do this, or you can do this, as we're learning how that actually works. So, but that's part of the whole process.
It prevents you from voting on something, and it's really not at this level, it's more at the planning, voting on something without the public having knowledge about what's going on. Something that would just arise, that could impact the public.
Right, that makes. Okay. All right, great. All right, so I think we're done with new business. And let's go ahead and move on to old business. So we had ad hoc meeting on June 10th. We had a workshop that we discussed some of the changes to the ordinance, and I made a commitment to collate a lot of those comments and put it into the ordinance and share it with you all for discussion for today. And I apologize for only giving you like less than 24 hours. Because it's been, I think everybody can attest, it's been just a crazy. Everybody's busy, so I
That's okay.
apologize.
Our next
for that.
meeting is going to be held at your pool.
We can do that.
Wish. I don't know that I can move all the cameras to your pool, so.
Yeah.
I don't think we want the camera to the pool. Oh,
No, no one needs to see that. But at any rate, if we want, we can, did you guys have a chance to review what I sent? Like,
And it's July 7th.
I mean, all the changes we discussed, I did review it, all the changes we made were in there.
okay,
I mean, I think it's moving, that's for sure.
okay. So, John, did you see any comments that we had or changes that you had issue with?
No, the only substantive changes, canopy tree where you needed a definition. I thought a definition would be a tree whose leaves cover an area of 15 feet or more. Kind of a medium-sized tree.
I think I sent the definition to you. Yep, and
Oh,
you,
did you?
you
Yeah.
inserted it, yes.
Yeah, and I cut and pasted from
Yep.
what
Time of
the
day.
email that you sent me.
Good. Yep, I saw that in there.
But I don't think it had a size. It just said medium. It just gave it
Correct,
general.
yes, it gave a general. And that's, we want to keep it general. So then that what developers come in, we can opine on and make recommendations based on that general version.
That's one thing I didn't find was the canopy tree depth.
Oh, that's what I
I
was
saw
talking
the
about.
shade tree. We have shade tree defined.
I sent you the canopy too.
Wasn't that in the arborist
It's just like-
thing, John?
Yeah, it was in the arborist thing that I sent over.
Yeah.
It was from the ISA.
Yeah,
Okay.
right, directly from the
Alright.
eyes.
Yep. Actually, I believe it was the night of the meeting. I sent it that later on that night.
Yeah,
3 in the
I
morning,
don't know
right?
why. Again, I was working on this.
If not, I can resend it when I get back to my office.
I shall return.
Definitions.
Um, I'm used to working on. I
And
can't
put-
do that.
Got it.
Doing the tree study at Lister.
Are you-
I was hired like a year ago, going through. They want to manage all their trees because they have so many of them. Putting like a 10-year management plan together. What it might-
You have 2 screens. You're gonna grab it. Look, I can't do that.
Oh, so you used to do it.
It's like my account. Like, works at 8.
So we gotta wait for Carol to come back, right? So, I did, so you had about the, a question about the chain link fence that maybe.
Yeah, the chain link came from John.
Okay,
I dropped it from 6 feet to 4 feet, though. 6 feet seemed kind of.
you know, on the, I'm in the definitions.
Protective tree preservation fence.
Yes. Oh, not less than 6 feet.
So chain link comes from him. Also 6 feet, I think, comes from him, but that seemed kind of a lot. We can ask him if 4 feet would do it.
That's during construction or demolition.
That's during
which
construction.
is-
They don't do that for trunk protection. There's usually
No,
a,
no, I understand. It's outside,
it's, yeah,
so they
it's
don't
the,
store bags of concrete right underneath the
oh,
tree.
yeah, but they just pick up the thing, move it. We had that at the college. Oh, it's in our way. We'll just move it.
Well, that's what I like about chain link. We're in no trouble.
But they still
What
do.
was that one in?
They got big machinery.
Which one was that in? About the-
In the
Did he say-
ordinance.
Oh, it's in the ordinance. It's not.
Page 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was looking for an email that he sent.
Oh,
No,
no.
I'm fine. I got
No,
it. I
that
got
was
it in here.
Part
I
of
got it
his
right here.
initial.
Oh, you got it. All right. You all good, Carol?
Yeah,
All right, so,
we're ready for another hour.
all right, so we'll come back to the tree replacement formula. So if it's okay with you guys, could you just
Oh,
want to,
on page 6,
yes,
says within 50 feet of the edge of the pavement.
Yes,
Didn't we settle on 30? I mean, it's a memory question.
we did, and then during our meeting, our ad hoc meeting, we extended it to 50.
Oh,
Be
did we?
more
Okay.
consistent with other shade tree.
That's correct. Yep.
We
Okay,
compared it to like Springfield's.
Right.
and some of the others.
So then that way we're minimizing, confusion amongst the practitioners and the professionals. So
Yep.
that's why we thought it would be just simpler to do it. All right, so we're gonna have a placeholder on the replacement tree. We could go through this, or did you have questions, comments, concerns? If not, if you're good with what changes we have with the addition of having the definition that I missed from John's
This is all we discussed at last meeting, right?
Yep,
That we went through.
pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
I just have a quick question. You're on page 7. You have a question, what does this mean
Yes.
under general powers? What is the, if we need to do clarification, I just want to know.
So I wasn't sure, so it says general powers and duties. Accepting such powers as are reserved to the board under applicable law or here in reserve, the commission shall have executive custody and control of the street trees and public trees. Trees on public land and authorized. I just had a question about what that was just more for a me question, because I wasn't sure what that means and what responsibilities. And I guess is that what's then clarified under the duties to explain what is that?
Yeah, I think there's more clarification under duties, but I think in broad strokes, what it's saying is that if it's on public land and it's a tree, you're responsible.
Okay.
If it meets the definition of what we call a street tree, you're responsible. So that's where your authority lies. And so when somebody comes before you and says, why are you telling me, so let's say somebody cuts down a tree in the middle of their front yard and it doesn't meet it's met a requirement that they would have had to come before you and they haven't. It's the authority that you have to say, yes, we expect this to be done. And we've given the authority to the township most likely through the codes office, I believe is what, if I remember right, to actually write a citation if somebody goes against your authority for what's to be done. So that if we go to court and the court says, under what authority did the Shade Tree Commission have to say that this tree couldn't be planted? It's right here. Does that help?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. And I guess some of my other questions were more like under that same thing. Some of it was vague, and I get being vague because we don't want to tie ourselves down to something, but should we be a little more, at least, and I'm looking on page 8, number 3, the commission may periodically conduct a survey of heritage trees within the township. So is there something that, should we commit to doing something like that? Annually,
Yeah, you had put annually in your comment. Here's what I would say.
That's a lot.
I think that you have the ordinance that gives you the authority. And then you may have guidelines that you have set up as a board that you're going to go by and say, we're going to, like one of the things that says that I think it says that you're just survey all trees on township property. I mean, and we talked about that last
Yes,
time
we
and
did.
said, oh my gosh, that's not something that you can do.
Right.
If you put that you were going to do that annually, you all could get busy today. And you would be busy from now until the end of the year, and you probably still wouldn't be done just based on the amount of trees that are out there on public property, right? And so so part of this is purposely written broad But you as a committee or as a board can set your own personal goals, which I would recommend. And one of the things I was going to bring up tonight for you too is we're in the budget season. So if you decide that you need something to be done, or that you need some supplies to do certain things that are in this ordinance, and you want to start doing those, we need to know what that is so that we can get you the proper supplies for you to do what you need to do. You know, like we talked about, you know, doing the survey and having a list of all the trees and what they were and all the species and going out and doing that on public property. You may say, we're going to do one property a year, you know, and I mean, literally it would take you over 20 years to do that, but that's probably a pretty good goal in doing it, because there's a lot of properties, and some of our properties have an awful lot of trees, you know. You look at Drexel Lodge, and in the front, it doesn't look like that much, but when you get behind over there, and you start walking through the back, there's a ton of trees back there. And it wouldn't take long to spend several days back there and still not have covered everything. And I mean, you guys would be a lot faster at it than I would be, because I'd be standing there with a book going, which one's this one? But, you know, but all of that being done, you know, it's going to take time. And so I think that you may set your own goals and your own process and procedures for how you want to do that. But that's something you want to set on your own. You don't want to lock yourself in the ordinance. It just gives you the authority to do it and the expectation.
And I can't, and forgive me if we did talk about this. We talked a little bit about being able to reference maybe UPenn extension site for the invasive exotic list. Now, was that something, were we supposed to double check to see if that was something we can do, is incorporate it by reference in
So
the
Steve
ordinance?
made a note last meeting, well, a recommendation that after our plant list,
Yes,
that should be a heading that says plants we do not recommend,
okay,
not to be planted within the township.
okay,
And then that link would go underneath that.
okay, so that would satisfy this requirement.
That's
Yes.
correct, yes.
Excellent, okay, all right, thank you. All right. Okay. I know I had a lot of questions. I don't know, well, what do you guys think? Did you have any questions, comments, concerns?
I mean, it was all in there what we discussed last time
Right.
about what did you say, Steve?
I'm
About
sorry.
about the trees. I remember you said in the front of the house, you did the wording, we were talking about it, one every 50 feet or something if you're.
Yeah, linear. So you had the depth of 50 feet, and then if you had a linear frontage, road frontage,
More than 50.
more
then
than
you would-
50, then you needed one for every 50.
one
for
for
every
50
50
feet
or
if you
portion
removed
thereof.
if you remove the shade tree.
Yes.
So, but that was is that under the replacement, or would that be?
That was, if you take down a tree, you need a tree every 50 feet in your front yard. Whatever that front yard setback, you need one every 50 feet if you remove one.
So basically what we're saying, if you haven't taken down a tree, we're not going to make you go put in one every 50 feet. But if you go to take one down in your front yard, we're going to require that you have one every 50 feet as a part of the replacement.
But that was in the replacement one, which we're going to get to talk to in just a minute. So I want to kind of close out where we are and just like everything else in the ordinance other than the replacement portion of it. Are we good with that? Because if we're good, then what I can do is clean it up.
Did you change it from 36 to 30?
I want it to be 30, yeah.
30.
So the heritage.
The heritage.
The heritage
Change
30.
it from 36 to 30?
Did I
We
change
haven't
it?
gotten to that discussion.
I thought that was in the, is that in?
It's
that's in the-
11.2. Next item on the agenda.
I just wanted to see if I changed, because I don't think I made that.
So we're discussing as a whole.
Well, no, it's two parts. One, we were reserving our discussion on the replacement and the heritage tree discussion. That's our second part of this, of the agenda. I just kind of want to give those that weren't, so John, basically, and Tom, since he's not here, since they weren't at the ad hoc meeting, I just wanted to give John an opportunity to ask questions and see if he's okay with those things that we changed, proposed to change anyway, within the ordinance. And then if we can come to some sort of agreement on the main portion, everything else other than the replacement and the heritage tree question, if we can come to agreement on that, and then we don't need to discuss this anymore and we can move on to that other topic. That's what I'm just
Now,
Yeah.
John, did you get your answer about the 4 foot instead of the 6 foot from?
No, John? I'm sorry. The 6-foot steel or chain link fence?
Yes,
For,
tree preservation.
yeah, to protect the tree from
Mhm.
destruction?
Mhm.
Does that have to be 6 foot?
It does.
What?
It should, yes.
Should it? Okay.
Absolutely.
Should make it 6.
That avoids anybody easily going over it. And also dumping stuff into the area as well, which does occur,
Cement truck,
which it does happen.
clean out. Never happened.
Yeah, right. Ask Villanova.
I have one comment on page 10,
Yeah.
where it talks about cut off the electricity within 24 hours after notice. I'm sure there's an existing procedure between all tree guys and the utility company. I know there is in Villanova.
Doing what?
When you're going to work on trees that have power lines going through them, you just coordinate with the utility company
No, they tell you they'll be out 6 or 8 months
from them.
from when you do it.
Yeah.
And if
So
there's a
this
storm, they don't
24
show
hours,
up.
24 hours is
What's that?
not ever going to happen.
No.
It's
Not
a
ever.
guide, it's a guide is all it is,
I just shall coordinate with the utility company.
within
The
24
one
hours.
job I
yeah.
started in February, didn't show.
Are we good with that one? Are you good? John?
I think you brought up a good question down below on that same page about whether or not this includes holiday lights.
Yeah, I thought maybe we should add the word other than for holiday occasions.
So that's, so that on page number 10, the very last one, number 8, says attach any electric wire, insulator, or device from holding of electric wire to any street tree or public tree.
And just say other than for holiday occasions.
You know, so I guess the question is, do we want to do that or don't want to do that?
We're talking about Christmas
Yeah,
lights. or
Yeah,
Hanukkah
no,
lights.
I hear what you're, I was just thinking it would
I mean-
eliminate us from having to put Christmas lights on a Christmas tree, because all the Christmas trees on public property, but, but no, I think that we probably want to have some kind of exemption for that for people who,
Your
Yeah.
township
Yeah.
commissioners would.
no, it would be a problem. So I think that seems reasonable.
So can you make that
Yep, except for,
other than for
Holiday
holiday
lighting.
occasions?
except for holiday lighting.
Yeah.
For temporary. should I say
Yeah, temporary. I would, you know, and you may even give a duration that lighting may be on for, you know, 30 days or, you know, 45 days, and just because,
Well, they
Who's
put it
gonna
up around
police that?
Thanksgiving.
Who's gonna police that?
Yeah,
Obviously,
I
us.
mean, how would you,
Well, police
because
it.
would they, how would we know when they actually put them up and took them?
So here would be an example that I could come about, that somebody could say, this is holiday lighting, right? Put my holiday lighting on my tree. I only light it the month of December, but I leave it on year round. I don't think we want to have that happen,
Right.
because that is what causes the problem to the tree.
Right.
So I think that if you say the duration of lights can only be for, and it's 30 or 45 days, whatever number you want to pick, it forces me, just like some homeowners associations require that I take my lighting off my building. I can't leave it on all year long. You know, like some people put their holiday lights up and never take them down. You know, it's,
Same situation.
it's
Well,
the
they
same
have them, they
situation.
have them down there in front of Fresco.
But are they on a tree?
On all the trees, street trees in the front
Well,
at night.
yeah, that's a good point. You
Every
just said
night.
that. I had forgotten about that.
And I had a customer that we actually had to take him out because the sycamore outgrew him. The guy's daughter was killed in a car crash or run over down in, and he had a big, huge sycamore. He put 30,000 pink lights on the sycamore tree down in Springfield. It was incredible. It took him like 6 days to put them on this tree, and it lasted 3 years before the squirrels and everything else. Then we had to go take them off, which took a day to take them off. But it was impressive when it was lit up.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was unbelievable.
You know, so I guess that is a question, you know, I mean, that's a good point. I forgot about Fresco's being down there, that whole shopping center has, has trees that are lit. And so, you know, but the reason why you do it, right, is because it affects the growth of the tree, right?
I mean, holiday lighting won't hurt it.
No, how, 45 days or whatever doesn't, but lighting that's kept on all the time, isn't that the problem?
But can we really tell these merchants not to market their property by, you know, because lights draw people in, especially at a little restaurant or something. I mean, especially
I mean, like down the city,
outside dining.
they have them on the street trees
Yeah.
all the time, you know?
I mean, I guess you really have to weigh, is this really an issue? I mean,
Yeah.
how bad is it gonna be? You were in the city of Philadelphia where you have a lot more tree lighting, because that's really all they have down there are people sitting on the sidewalks, eating dinner, especially like on Chestnut and Market. That would be an issue. I don't believe it's gonna be there. That's my opinion.
I put lights in my Japanese maple front years ago, never took them out. Well, the tree did more damage to the lights than the lights did to the tree.
I mean, trees,
And the squirrels ate them, and when they hang down in my face with a mailman's face, I cut them off with the pruners. They're still in there. Yeah,
that's
like-
fine. If you want to take it out, if you want to recommend that it be taken out, that whole line, I mean, that's okay. But if you're gonna have it in, I think it is
Yeah,
reasonable.
It's gonna be too hard to manage.
I agree.
Yeah.
I just think it's, uh-oh,
We're not moving.
see, we didn't have our holiday lights
There you go.
on. All right, so who wants to keep it as is or delete that? Because I do kind of agree that I think putting that kind of constraints on merchants could really kind of undermine what we're trying to achieve here. And maybe if we can table, maybe if it becomes a problem, keep an eye on it. And then maybe that's something we can consider later, but I'm sort of the recommend that we take out number 8.
Yeah, let's do that. Then we don't have to be policemen.
I agree.
Go for it.
Good catch, John. Weighing me on keeping things. So on page 11, under the other required tree work, question about number 4. In addition to the requirements of Chapter 104 natural landscaping, shade trees and street trees shall be planted by the applicant or developer for any land development subdivision as follows: along sidewalks, highways, or new streets, highways, sidewalks, pedestrian ways, bicycle walkways, paths, and I kind of had the same question that John did. That seems kind of vague. It's just like they shall be planted, but it really doesn't say how many distance apart or those types of things. But is that something that would be handled by the codes folks?
Right, so that would fall underneath Sal though, especially during the streets and the buffers and stuff like that,
I just had a
which
question.
we already have a formula for.
Okay. And then, so what happens, I mean, are there trees that, in some, like the city particularly, you see where the sidewalks have started to heave from the tree roots? Are there species of trees that are less prone to
Absolutely.
that?
Absolutely. Mostly what you're seeing and referring to in the city is the large sycamores, which are planted, within the medium strip of the sidewalk versus the curb. I mean, there's no other planting alternative. I mean, that's the designated planting zone. There's going to do damage. Here we have a little bit more leeway because we're planting in a green strip that, the back side of that tree has more room to, push its root plate out to.
Okay.
Are oaks less likely, if they're tap rooted, are they less likely to do that?
So most trees in this area do not have a taproot except for like shagbark hickory. Most of them are what's considered a pancake root ball, so they're within the top 13 inches at max. So, your hardwoods are going to have more intrusive roots compared to your evergreens and minor flowering trees. So oaks, yes, I mean, they can be, especially like a pin oak or a willow oak. But then you get like sycamore and London plane tree and, red maple, very, very intrusive root system. But again, it's part of the deal,
Right. And then, John, you also had a question about the fence requirement on page 13.
Yeah, no, we worked it
You
out
got that?
with John.
Okay.
It's 6 feet,
chain link in concrete.
chain link 6 feet.
I have a question on in the event that replanting is impractical or impossible by the commission, the applicant shall make payment to the commemorative shade fund and shall plant the required trees. So is that something, a criteria that we would come up with later? Or would be kind of step-down guidance to this? Or do you have typical procedures? I would imagine that this may come up in other ordinances as well.
So I know that we got, when we talked last time, we weren't going to use the word payment. Almost similar to extortion. We were going to use a fee in lieu of.
Well, I think Steve said there's actually thing already set up in the planning, isn't there?
In lieu
For,
of
for
fee.
if it's enabled, it goes into, is there already something precedent already set up?
I don't think it's specifically related to trees, or in that way, but I mean, there's similar things that happen, like if you can't provide the certain amount of recreation space,
Right.
there's a formula that's done. I think that, one of the things that we might want to do is specify that the formula would be based on what
We have to put a monetary
We
figure
have to put
on
a
it, yeah.
monetary figure and maybe tie it to what the value of what it would take to plant that particular, the cost to buy the tree and plant that tree. Whatever, I don't know what an average tree costs to do that. But I would assume we could come up with that and we could put that in our fee schedule as a placeholder.
Right.
We just did it for another township and I just did all the math, so we don't have to do it for you folks. It's $765 a tree, what it comes out to be. That's
So
the
like a
installed
3.5?
cost
3.5,
with labor, correct? 3 inch, 2.5 to 3,
2.5 to 3.
including labor.
including labor. That was your average industry. Obviously, we can't have we can't price it based on like a Gordon Eady planting at a house in Gladwin. And we can't plant it for somebody just planting a whip in a park. So it's that medium industry average of a standard shade tree.
It's,
And
yeah,
it's
That's about
cost.
right, because you're paying
Very fair
two
number.
and a quarter for a tree. So
And
it's-
to be honest, yeah, and for the developer, that's what he's gonna be paying. So,
I told brothers.
Yeah.
One time over the price of the tree. They buy the trees.
They're gonna be replacing a lot of trees in Lissitor.
So, so you might want to, if that's what we want to use, as an industry average for planting a 3-inch tree, we could put that in and then set by the fee schedule of the board. And so, and maybe we just actually just state as determined by the township arborist, and that way you have a third party who's figuring it out. It's not you all figuring that out, and it makes sense to me.
and the solicitor will comment as well on it, I'm sure.
Yep.
So when I provide, because I'll remove all comments out of here and just leave the track changes.
Yep.
And then do I then provide that to John and you?
Yeah, if you would, just provide it to us. We'll quickly do a review, then we'll get it over to the solicitor.
Okay,
What I will probably do is take it back to the board for saying, to share it with them, stating that the Shade Tree Commission is making these recommended changes. I'd like to give it to the solicitor for review. Get them for permission for me to do that. Because obviously it's going to cost something for the solicitor to review it, and I want to make sure I've covered that, and then we'll have that from there. And then and then he'll go through, and there's a certain procedure they go through on how they list all the changes out. And then they'll go through and do that, and then get everything ready so that we can advertise it properly and make the changes.
And then there's a grace period, obviously. So, we'll have to figure out. So applicants, just say an applicant starts something, say this gets posted and approved to set changes on this, let's hypothetically say August 1st. Okay. And we'll say toll comes into a September, a plan they might have been working on for the last 3 months in order to prepare for us. We're gonna have to look at that grace period and come up, what I'm saying? We have to be fair, obviously.
that was pretty much, that covers it. So I think good. Carol?
But it's fee scheduling.
He's still looking.
Oh, he did have a question on page.
Yeah, that's-
Page 15.
If the landowner is unwilling to replace the tree.
we could request a fee in lieu of.
You can request the fee in lieu of.
And again, we don't want the money, we want the tree planted. It's a deterrent.
Yeah,
It's a deterrent. We're not looking to,
make money off this.
correct. Fee in lieu of is really for somebody that shows hardship. Somebody that has more infrastructure than green space and can logistically put those trees back in play. That's where it's going to benefit the township. If, somebody like Savanian has a 300-acre site and the CEO doesn't like trees, he can't just say, I'm going to give you $65 per tree times 3,000 trees. You know what I mean? We're not going to allow that. It's not a negotiation. It's for hardship cases.
Right.
So you want to change it from if the landowner is unwilling to, if the landowner does not have the space,
Improve hardship, I would put.
improve hardship, that's good.
So I think then we're ready to focus
What'd you say?
He's
Oh,
going on to 11.
Yes. So do we have to make a motion on that to move on to the next?
Since the tree replacement is in the ordinance as well, I think you could tie all of, I know you've treated those as two separate,
Yeah.
but I think for what you're trying to do, I would tie all of those together and treat it as one, and then make a motion. All the changes that you approved from your first piece, and then the whatever you decide here as one.
You want 60?
No, I want to go back to where, because we're going to be talking the heritage tree, because we want to change the size of it. And we want to,
Heritage tree.
you want to start with heritage tree? And we were also going to talk about the tree replacement. Start with, okay.
we lowered the heritage tree, didn't we, from,
Yeah, John requested it lowered because he said by the time you get to a 36-inch tree, they're,
it's ready to fall over anyway.
well, hopefully not.
Right, okay, it could be.
It can be on
What
its
did you
way out.
recommend, John, 30 inches?
30 inches to try to preserve some of the good, healthy, larger trees and to preserve them for future so we don't have these ailing larger trees that we're seeing, especially when a developer comes into play. The developer can come in and see a 36-inch diameter tree, there's always going to be a defect with it. So that is their out for non-replacement. That makes sense. Happens a lot. I really like.
The original bit, from the original thing, it's page 4.
Oh, heritage tree's on 5.
Well, the definition of heritage trees.
Thank you.
Sure thing, Toots.
Oh, my God. Page 5. This is it, right?
I'm back, I'm going from
Oh,
the original original.
I'm going with her latest.
No, my thing won't download it.
Really?
Yeah, not in this.
Okay, so we've got 30 inches.
Yeah.
All right, I made that edit. Right.
Text is a cricket.
Did you get your notification from the United States? You canceled that you didn't qualifications? They sent me one. And I'm like, what? I go through, I'm like all up to date and everything. I'm like, what is that? And then the next email came back like an hour later. Oh, sorry for the misunderstanding. This doesn't. I'm like scrambling through, like checking my credits and everything. Like, I know I got enough.
All right, so we're on page 6. So we didn't have to change anything else with the heritage tree on page 4 or 5, depending
I
on
got
what you're
7.
looking at, or 7, whichever page you're on. So we're changing it in the definitions of what,
The definition's going to change.
right, to 30. So we've got that. And then, so, and on page 14.
But one question, if it's smaller than 3 inches, you can just take it down? What do we say?
Well, no, let's back up. That's defining the heritage tree, which has a separate set of guidelines to go by. So it doesn't mean that any tree under that can just be taken down. It just doesn't have the same requirements for permitting. The heritage tree has certain protections that are
Has
in
additional
addition
protection.
to other protections. So this doesn't, you have some other guidelines in for all other trees. It's just the definition for the heritage tree. So that's the change that you're. At least that's my understanding of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, someone, if it's not a heritage tree in their backyard, can take a tree down. If it's not in the thing in
That's
the front.
correct. If it's
you
in the
need the-
backyard.
If you need the permit if it's in the front yard of your
Correct.
house, that 50 by whatever,
Yeah,
or front of the house, whatever.
yeah. Exactly.
Then you have to go by them guidelines every 50. You fall into that category.
Right.
So do we have any changes then under D for removal or disturbance of a heritage tree?
We need a separate tree work permit heritage trees than regular.
Fillable PDF form attached to website.
What happens if it's an ash tree?
Gotta be very careful with that. Fillable form will come to us. Your question, Rob. Problem with the ash tree that we've seen in other towns is every road below is using ash as their way. Oh, it was an ash tree. Fire, there's no permit required. Happening is they'll be taking down another tree, trying to stop it, so on. Oh, it was just an ash tree. We still wanted to come in front of us. That way, put up, or whatever, just verify or just drive by and verify. Wait, oh.
Yeah, because I have one right now I gotta do.
Just a skirt tail around that permit process.
Because I have an old ash tree, it's like 8 foot across at the base, it's huge. The lady really doesn't want to take it down, but the one big bough, if it's dead, it's broken apart in storms, 6 or 7 years ago, the whole top blew out of it, like laying in neighbors, now the neighbors all, it's got sprouts on it and everything, but, it's got ash borer in it, it's got, it's a shame to take the tree down, I'd hate to take it down, but I told the woman, I said, yeah, it's split, it is hanging towards your neighbors,
No, I think the point is good, though, that it's not that we're gonna keep the process from happening. They come in for the permit. We're not charging anything for these permits anyway, so it's not like it's.
No, I'm just wondering if John can look at that because it's an ash. Can you personally look at that, John?
So, yeah, we have discretion, so I go over, it's a dead ash tree or not.
Yeah.
Obviously. Wow, then it's a healthy tree. I'll fill that out as part of my form. Township section.
Do they have the permits ready available? Steve, are the permits ready available?
I think they're online now.
Oh, are they?
I think so. If they're not, then I'll have to go back.
I'll get you the address.
So
John.
if you're asking, you're denied.
I'm denied? Oh, I don't care. I'll leave it up. I don't
You
care.
just gave me authority to deny it.
I don't care. Don't matter to me. I'd leave the thing. Beautiful. It's a shame,
It is a shame, some of the trees that are coming down because of that.
I mean, if it was like not near the neighbor's house, I told the lady, just leave it, Maybe even try to treat it, what's left of it, but it's just where it is. Yep.
Are you all good under the heritage trees?
Good. Anything else? All right, we ready to move on then to the,
Well, that point there that I just said about the thing, John has the discretion without going in front of the board. Isn't it supposed to go in front of the board that way, the heritage tree to be?
So no, what we would probably do is just say, tomorrow, Steve said, obviously, I'm your consultant.
Right.
So the township, I'm gonna go out and look, and then at the next meeting, there'll be a list of ones I approve.
So you can do it. We don't have to look at it.
You don't have to look at it now.
I was
I'll
under the
look at it,
impression
I'll-
that the heritage tree had to be reviewed by, but as the township can give you the right to do that? to look
Well,
at them?
actually, it's you who are giving him the right.
Well, that's what I mean. Can we
No.
give him, is there something
Yeah.
written in there?
I think that we'll, we may want to look at one piece here about, do we want to change it to say, or designated, or the Shade Tree Commission can also designate review to the
How come you took it?
At the meeting.
staff or consultant.
Yeah, because I don't think it's written in there now.
I'm doing something else.
Yeah, we'll look at
You're
that.
still, you're still catching up?
No, if you have suggested language, a place to change in the ordinance with respect to that discussion you guys are having, then just shoot me over that language and I'll tell you exactly where.
I would
Chris,
just,
is there something that you don't feel comfortable adding the lingo into, put a note for the solicitor?
Okay.
Yeah, what I'm going to recommend. is
do you agree with that, though? That instead of coming in front of us, that he can review it, that every heritage tree that someone wants to get a permit for, that it doesn't have to come in front of us, that John actually review it without having to, people having to wait 2 months or whatever?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think particularly if it's a dangerous tree,
Yeah.
you know, we don't want to, I don't want to have to call a special meeting of this group every time we have a dangerous tree that needs to come down.
Right.
And so that's why we have hired an arborist to help assist us on that side. And then the other, if it is something that's not an emergency, then it'll come before you as the list of, these are the things that need to be done.
Right.
Where we're gonna run into problems is you guys need to know about this, residents, hours sending out copy of our ordinance, highlights and all that good stuff. A lot of people are gonna say, well, we didn't know. We gotta figure out a grace period. Adopted.
Look, I know there was a big oak tree taken down right on Westchester Pike there in front of Lattice Travel. I'm sure there was no permit pulled on that.
What was Mr. Rob?
I was putting up banners the other day, 4th of July banners, and I'm like, well, Brighton is where this banner used to be. I'm like, oh shit, someone took the oak tree down.
We're gonna have it, we're not gonna stop it. Part of that.
It is the most difficult thing for us to manage, because unless it happens when we're here, you know, I can tell you typically what happens if somebody wants to do it behind our back, and, you know.
I know Springfield's pretty good at nailing me
We
every time
call
I
it,
pull
I
into
call it
that
the
town
Saturday or
square.
Sunday special.
Yeah.
The code's not riding around and it's riding around sometime or whatever it might be.
If somebody's, that's an interesting point. If somebody sees somebody taking down a big tree that's not a white ash, is there a number to call?
I mean, obviously they should call the township. The challenge is, you know, as mentioned, it's happening on Saturday. The
There's
only,
nobody here.
the only group that's here is our police department, and our police department is not the one that enforces this ordinance. So that becomes becomes the penalty side. And that may be a point where we set a penalty for people who are doing this, but once we get the word out and we feel that we've done a proper job of getting the word out well, and, you know, then we you could set up a penalty, and you could put that in here. You know, if you're taking down a heritage tree, you know, for every inch DBH it was that you took down, it's $1,000. You could probably get people's attention pretty quick, you know?
So I mean, if somebody takes it down and, you know, it's a Saturday and they say you call, leave a message for Steve, calls me Monday, John, can you go review it? There's ways for us to determine how big that tree
Oh yeah, Google Earth.
is. Google or
Street
Terraserver,
view.
There's a lot of Street View, sampling of other trees around that one tree.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of methodologies.
I don't want to call you.
You're just
You've
calling
got better things to
You're
do.
just sending them an email. on
You're
Saturday.
just notifying us, right? And so when you notify us at the township, we take action and we work through that. I mean, I gotta tell you, we get calls every day related to what people think people are doing that they shouldn't be doing. And sometimes they're right. And other times we get there and we go, well, we've got a permit, and that helped. One of the first things we'll do is we'll go through our records. Was there a permit issue? Did they even apply for a permit? We'll start going through those processes. And, this is one of those things that's still pretty new. The ordinance was passed at the end of last year. You guys are still kind of just even looking at the ordinance, how to wrap your hands around it.
Mhm.
And so, it's still pretty fresh and new, and we're going to make some changes, and then we're going to spend a lot of time getting the word out and trying to get as many people to know it and all of those kind of things. And then once we've done that, then we'll have certain actions that we can take. And, I'm making a note that we might want to add a penalty section for people that choose to just ignore it and go do something, particularly since we're not recommending a fee for the permit initially, because we're wanting people to do it. And then we'll see how many we're getting. If you're getting 70 permits a week, we may need to look at something, because now we got to start covering some costs of all of that, but we'll just see where it goes.
And remember, folks, it's a deterrent. Not treat. Don't have the power to, 7 o'clock at night, nobody's out there. Trying to deter people, have them come in front of us.
It's think about it like this. You're going down the highway, right? And there's those people who are doing speed limit following all the guidelines. There's those people who are kind of pushing the edge and, doing 5 over. And then there's those who are like, the ones that are in the other lane that pass you really quickly and you don't even have any idea how fast they're driving, right? And, so when I look at it as where the tree ordinance is, you got people who are going to follow everything that we have and they're going to do everything. You're going to have some people who are going to go out and they're going to trim their tree, even though the ordinance says that, you're not supposed to even trim the tree without having approval for certain things. They might do the trim, but they would never have taken the tree down without coming in. And then you're going to have people who will clear cut their whole property and go, what do you mean? Right? And so it's going to be those kind of things that, just like in any other guideline that we have in the township, there'll be those who follow it. There'll be those who say they don't know anything about it. Even if they did, they wouldn't listen anyhow. And so then that's why we have to put in enforcement. But police don't catch every speeder. We're not going to catch every person that takes a tree. But what I will tell you is, as people know this, we will get more phone calls. And because neighbors, this is one area where neighbors will call on, because when somebody takes a tree down, it impacts them a lot of times too. And so they will do it. So we'll get more notifications. And probably the person that did 35 down to 25, if that makes sense.
Well, I did have one question. What about in some of these developments that have maybe homeowners associations or property owners associations? Does the ordinance apply in those areas as well?
So the requirement is the same. We haven't come in and said it doesn't. The homeowners association can have laws that are more restrictive, but it can't be less restrictive than what our guidelines are.
Okay.
I mean, they don't have to pass something to equal ours,
Mm-hmm.
but ours apply. They could have things that are more restrictive.
So even if the streets maybe within that subdivision are considered private, so would that?
Yeah,
still
that's a good
apply?
question. I'll have to review this, because it really talks about public street trees. That may not be.
Right.
But any part of the HOA that abuts the public street is then under that requirement.
All right. So are we good with heritage tree?
Not yet.
No. Uh-oh.
I'm not finding anything, because one of the things it says about tree replacement for heritage trees, and there's nothing in here.
Okay. So
Not involved in the meeting with that.
We did, yeah, we never got around to talking about that.
no, so but that's what, now we're in the replacement tree. Yeah, it's 8 to 20. And, so we,
Well, that heritage tree is now 30 inches. And we talk about 6 replacement trees for anything 30 inches or larger. So should we leave it at that?
But do we want to have anything special for
You mean
a
like a-
replacement tree? Well, it's sort of interesting. I think it was when I sat in on the Board of Supervisors meeting a month or so ago. And there was an interesting topic where, depending upon how many inches diameter the tree was that was being removed, that the sum of the diameters of the replacement trees totaled that.
Everybody that,
Yeah, that's really, that can be
Was it
challenged.
Yeah,
Okay. Eye for an eye. Some cases,
if you have room for it.
you know, so for example, they take out one 30-inch heritage tree. Caliber trees. Cost them.
Yeah. It was an interesting thought, but
No, some townships do it, and it does work for some.
But do we want to have anything special for heritage trees, or is it just going to go in with the,
30 inch.
could there be maybe, the replacement, and then also maybe there be, that fee, or like an in lieu fee payment into the commemorative tree fund so that a tree can be planted as a public tree?
I like 30% of that.
and also it all depends the health of the tree too. If they're taking a heritage tree down, it's
That'll be
declined.
part of the permitting process. So
Right.
there's not gonna be any replacement. Not gonna give it 40% of the trees alive. You know.
No, what I'm saying is if there's a dead tree that's being taken down, it's a heritage tree. I mean,
There's no replacement.
there's, well, I mean,
You can't make somebody replace
this is true.
unless I found complete negligence. Rarely gonna happen. We have.
Round up in a massive here, right? Where are we? Heritage.
we're on 11,
Replacement.
we're on 11.2, and of the original thing, we're somewhere on page 6 of 19.
Okay, so that's right where I am.
We're still on 14, right?
No,
6 of 19.
6 of 9.
How did we
We
go
were
back?
talking about the tree replacement formula. We're done talking about the heritage tree part of it. Talking about- Right?
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
moving right along.
Yes. We're in the home stretch here, people. I'm fading fast. Let's see. So based on that conversation, what are you suggesting the language needs to be? And in what section? So I'm looking at the tree replacement formula. We have 1, 2, 3. Where do you want the change? Do you want to, are we adding something? I guess is my question. Are we adding something about the replacement of a?
He said, John said 30%.
All heritage trees should be replaced. No less than 30%.
Slow down.
I think we're over that right now. Yeah, unless we're gonna change it. We have 30-inch, I'm doing this on my calculator to make sure I'm getting my numbers right, but we have 6 replacement trees,
Yep.
right? Oh, it could be 1.5. I'm sorry. I
It
read
could be 1.5
something.
inches.
I thought it had
So
to be
that's
1.5.
18 inches worth of trees.
Well, should the 30% be applied to all of the different categories, or just heritage?
So continue. All heritage trees must
Replaced 30% of the total diameter of the tree. I would put it.
What'd you say?
Closer to a line.
What do you say?
Or two?
He wants the solicitor to give a
Solicitor
review
wants
of
to-
that.
Oh, to a pine, okay.
Okay.
It's a $10 word.
Sounds fancy.
John uses it a lot, I'm sure.
So since we've changed Heritage Tree to be equal to 30 inch, thus when we get down to letter E, we could just change that definition. And I think you would be okay.
Yes.
So to what?
I think we're saying that it would be at
Because
least
if it's 30
30%
inches,
of the
it's-
size of the
Oh,
tree
it's,
removed.
so strike it?
If it's
No,
30
I'm
inches.
saying that you're just changing it to be, replacement is to equal
Oh.
30% of the size of the
30
tree.
inch is,
Gotcha.
which is a heritage tree.
Because E is 30 inches, you're basically saying that's a heritage tree. Although I think we've given another.
So just to be clear, are we taking out the 6 replacement tree
Mhm.
I'm
requirement?
replacing it with a 30%.
Actually, I think what I would recommend is to call it, to define it as heritage tree, because I want to, looking for something here real quick, because I think we have said, unless we changed it,
Why don't we just say 30-inch DBH and then in brackets, heritage tree?
That's exactly what I just did.
30 inch or greater.
Yeah,
but I thought we had I thought under heritage tree, it could be a tree
Of significant value.
or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, we had some historic value.
And that's
or-
why I'm saying, I think we want to use the term replacement for heritage tree and not define it by the size,
Okay.
Yeah,
because that
got
way.
it, got it. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, yeah.
I'm just trying to
Yeah,
We
remember.
had some other caveats in there, correct?
Yeah, because the one tree out there was a heritage tree that was planted for, in lieu of the police officer passed away.
Yes, so that if we're going to replace it, it's got to be at least with 30% of the
Right.
size of what that tree is.
Correct. Good point. That's a
I-
good
it
catch.
was just what-
That's
that's
a real-
what-
that's a good catch.
That's what triggered it for me
Yeah.
when I was thinking that. I would change,
oh, I'm leaving.
I would change D to read 20 up to 30 inches. And then that way, if the tree's 29 and a half, and I would recommend that we just change each one of those,
All right,
you know,
up to.
3 up to 7, 7 up to 13, 13 up to 20, 20 up to 30. Because I always get the person that comes in and says, my tree's 6.5, it's not on here, I don't have to do anything.
We'll get a lot of that, I'm sure.
Got it. good with 2. All replacement trees shall have a minimum 2.5 inch.
Developer, yeah.
Good.
But, yeah, sure, right, go for it.
All right, and then number 3 is the commission will maintain on the website suitable. And replanting pursuant to the tree. So we would use the same list, right?
Now back up 1 second. Now, Steve, what you said about the 50 by 50, is this part of the replacement part, or is that another
Say it
section?
again.
In
The
the
linear
setbacks that we did in the front, 50 foot from the edge of the curb or the
Yes,
front of
that
the
would-
house,
Yes.
or 50 foot, does that go in this section for about replacements?
Well, this, I think in there, it says you have to do replacements, so this is where they would go to determine what a replacement had to equal.
Right, but where do we have that thing saying that
We don't- I
in your
don't think
front
we-
yard you
I
require?
don't think we do yet.
We don't have that yet.
But that has to go in that section, correct?
Where do you want to put it?
I think it goes in the removal section.
Right, 1, right?
And it just states that you have to replace, if you have to have at least 1 tree for every 50 feet of linear frontage, right? That's what you would want it?
Yeah, yeah.
So if there aren't, if they remove any tree from
Yep.
And that would go in the schedule.
Correct.
Well, except for you only need, but then
One
that
tree.
will,
So it's kind of 2 definitions.
yeah, it's kind of 2 definitions.
That's more of a streetscape.
Right, and this is more for, the other one is for more land development,
That's
right?
correct.
the
But it
where,
leaves it gray so we can blend them together if needed.
Yep.
Obviously, it's to get the people to replace the house if they can.
Correct.
Correct.
And again, their heritage tree, they're gonna have to come and apply for a permit.
Correct, and then replace.
so, sorry. So I'm hearing that this needs to be in 2 different places. Which 2 different places?
Well, I think you have it under your tree replacement formula. That stays where it is.
So we're good?
I think if you made the change that we talked about, that we gave a definition of we
got the
added that section for heritage tree was replaced by 30%.
Yeah.
I think we're good there. And then under removal, if I remember right,
Of a heritage tree?
No, any tree,
of any tree, where is that?
any shade tree.
Any street
Including
tree.
heritage.
Any street tree.
She's lost. There is removal.
I know, that's what I'm looking
That's what
for.
we're all looking for.
Ah,
Planning,
Removal, 14 of 19. 13 of 19.
That's
Commit commercial.
Heritage tree.
Well, here's removal and tree planting in commercial districts.
would it be under
It's not.
demolition, grading, and tree work permit application? No.
What's about the permit?
has to be from 14 back. Rest goes in.
I think we're looking under age and 9 and 10. And
Injurious street trees. We're replacing street trees, here we go. E, 9 of 19.
Carol, what page you on?
9 of 19.
Are we going to require a permit for pruning too?
Say it again, Rob?
Pruning of street trees?
No.
No? So that's in there, so that's going to have to be taken.
Oh, yeah.
only if I can make Pico have to get it. I don't call it what they do pruning.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the PUC that makes them do that.
More aesthetic. You're topping them. You make a U shape out of them now. Because when you,
Smelling basil, it's like, where's
I'm
it coming
sorry.
from?
I'm getting over a respiratory. I'm really get everybody,
and not contagious, so they say, but I'm not.
I know, it smells like I just picked basil to make pesto, and I'm like, where's this basil coming?
you got some vapor rub, she was starting rubbing them. My mom used to
It's on page
when
10,
I was little.
underneath
But I
street
don't
trees.
see where we were gonna add that.
I don't think it needs to be.
Well, we were gonna add the statement.
Yeah, about the,
50 feet.
yeah.
Does someone want to just?
Well, she did
I'm
add
just trying
that.
to figure out where to put it. Yeah, they haven't figured it out yet.
I think that we would just add a statement under B, planting replacement of street trees and public trees. And basically say, but that's where we'll add the 50 feet piece.
9 of
Do we-
9, 9 of 9 under B.
Did we put that in someplace else? Did I miss it?
I don't know, where
No,
you
we
say,
haven't put it
Steve, it should
anywhere
go?
yet.
You were talking about the replacement, and it could be, is there someplace else that we put in the 50, one per 50 feet?
We haven't
Not
put that
yet.
in there yet.
Okay, so I think right now, we're just gonna list that, and we're gonna let the solicitor determine the best location of placement, because it's either in B on page 9,
Right.
under street trees and public trees, or it's, what was it? It could go under, it could go as part of C. So we'll just, we'll work with the solicitor as the proper location for that.
Is it every 50 feet or fraction thereof?
Yes, it's every 50 feet or fraction thereof. So here's what I would recommend, is that we take all of the changes that you want to make and put them into one, list all the changes that you want to make, basically without necessarily having them all tied into the document. You've done a good job of doing that, but just list all the changes you want to make. And then we'll take the document plus all the changes you want to make, turn it over to the solicitor. They'll make it all fancy and do all the things that has to be done to make it legal and put any terminology in that they say, we need to do this or do that, which they all have to do to make up their mind. And so, but we'll have them do that, and we'll get that back, and
Do a final review.
we'll do a final review, and we'll have the board then advertise and then go for approval. So we probably have one for me to take back. If we came up with the list, I would recommend, and The next meeting's tomorrow night or Monday night. I think it's too soon. But I think if we could be on the August 12th, August 9th. I think it's August 9th is the second Monday. Let me review. Yeah, August 9th. If we could have somebody from this committee kind of prepare just a short, here's the changes that the committee would like to see made to the ordinance. We would like it to be able to be turned over to the solicitor for further review. And I'll talk through that part of it, what needs to happen. But just here's the reasons why. You know, you've come up with some really good reasons. And so it's important that they understand you're not just trying to make these changes just to say out, you know, I want to do it for this, just because we just want to. It's, you know, these are the changes that you think need to be made in order for it to be really a functioning ordinance that you can do. And, you know, like the reason to take it from 36 to 30. And what I suggest we kind of put that together. John, we'll ask you to kind of help review it to make sure we've done everything that we've got.
Absolutely.
And then we'll get it prepared, do a quick, you know, 3 to 5 minute thing for the board, just kind of saying, here's what we're looking at as possible change, as recommended changes from our committee to the board. Get a kind of a general buy-in. Yeah, that makes sense. And then because if there's any objection that they have, I'd rather not put it in the ordinance. If they are saying no, that before we advertise it. So we get them to give some buy-in, and then, or if they have questions, it's an opportunity to ask questions. And then from that, then we'll get it out, get the solicitor to do it, get it put out for review. Potentially could have it before the board to advertise in the second meeting in September, because you would have had it at your meeting in September, and then it would probably be passed. I have to remember this is not a zoning, so I think we could pass it at the next meeting. I don't think I need 30 days. But I'll have to look. We may need 30 days, which means it probably makes it the second meeting in October that it gets passed. So
Excellent.
that's kind of how I see this flowing, so everybody kind of understands the expectation.
So
We move as fast as lightning in government, you know?
So, I mean, I will commit to get this cleaned up version to you early next week.
Okay,
So, 'cause I should have some time. And then, oh. Sorry, I'll need my computer. The meeting's over.
so I heard you state a August meeting, and we were not necessarily scheduled. I'm happy to schedule one. I
Oh,
think
yeah,
that-
no, I wasn't sure.
No, my phone doesn't say we have one.
Okay,
No,
no,
it
because we were
doesn't.
going every other. That's
Yeah,
right.
we would go
So
every
he-
month, but are you comfortable with that in light of?
I
all
think
what you have
we're
on.
okay, because we're just,
I mean, that's the main part of the ordinance. We went through everything.
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
then-
I know you have two things left here that are action items for you. But I would say then in September, we will finalize anything on the ordinance. We'll pick up as agenda items for sure, you know, discussion about surveying township property trees and also responsibilities of the commission. I would also need for probably in September, at that point, I can wait that long, but I'll probably need, if you need any budget dollars. If you can think of anything that you might need, I'll definitely need that at that point for us to put together the budget.
does the township have like a GPS?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, GPS. A GPS unit? I mean, 'cause if we're-
I have plenty of them. I'll give you one to go out and do it.
Okay.
I think more of the question that might be, I need to look at the access we have to the tree inventory, the way it's set up, that software. And I just want to make sure that it's a software that you guys are comfortable with. If it is, then we'll go from
Probably
there.
ArcGIS, I think.
Well, part of ArcGIS, but we also had a software that we used when we did the Emerald Ash Borer.
Oh, okay.
We surveyed all of our ash trees, at least the ones that were reasonably close to accessible. I mean, you know, we had a large number on Goshen Road that we took down. To, you know, give you an example, I think it was like close to 70 that we took down there. And then we saved a number of others on there that we tried to, but that's just one location. So there was a lot of trees that we had. So anyway, we will, I'll confirm that software, get that back to you, and make sure that we still have access to all of that, because we did that through the forestry, urban forestry group that helped us through that process. So I'll work with George on that. Just another quick kind of housekeeping thing, long-term, I'm going to kind of move out of my role here with you, and we're going to move Andy in for the purposes of permitting. And then from time to time, when you need George's help, I'll stick with you until we get the ordinance rewritten and until we get your kind of roles and things like that into place. But I'm going to start having Andy attend for the permitting part, so you get used to him being here for that part and working all of that piece together. And that'll be more of what you're doing on a long-term basis, you know, and so you won't need me here for all of those meetings and doing that. So I just wanted you to kind of be aware of a little bit of change that's going to happen there staff-wise. And it probably will also mean that Nick will not be doing the agendas for you. It will be whoever we're hiring that's going to be helping Andy on that side. So his administrative person left about a month and a half ago, so we're in the process of trying to replace that person. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
So, you know, we were talking about maybe an August meeting. So my only, I think, yeah, I'm going to actually be in Alaska during the September meeting. It's the 9th, right? So I will be in Alaska.
We feel bad for you.
And I have not taken a vacation in like 5 years, so
Enjoy yourself.
This is
Would you like me to send you a Zoom link to join our meeting?
I don't think I will have connection.
What a guy.
I just thought I'd ask.
Very nice of you, but I think I'm going to be in Denali National Park is my plan.
In denial.
Well, good for you.
Or actually, we might be on the plane or on the train. No.
You're on vacation.
No, thanks.
I'm really kidding. I'm not encouraging that.
Now, do we have an October meeting?
Yeah, but we don't really want to push this out.
No, I just need.
You have a September meeting, so we'll plan the September meeting as long as at least three of you are here. We can have that meeting, and hopefully Tom will be here by then.
Are we meeting in August also?
No, I think we're
That's
saying
what we're
we're going to skip the August.
Okay.
Doesn't Trish have to like reapply for this commission?
Oh, yeah.
Like soon?
Oh, yeah.
Aren't you like the?
Yeah, when does my term end? Isn't it
Well,
like?
you can be reappointed.
Can you do that right now for her?
Without telling you.
We set everything up to end at the end of the year,
Yeah.
even though I think this group was actually,
Started in
I
October.
think you started in October.
Right.
Yeah.
We did everything for a year plus those 3 months, and then did all the terms accordingly. And so we have all that in place. We'll be notifying everybody probably in September, right about the 9th, of people who would like to continue to serve. We usually do that early on so that we know who wants to serve, and then let the board know that, and then they can make a decision about how they want to advertise for. Anything else?
Pick up your gavel.
Oh,
Yes.
oh,
Get your-
can I
get your
adjourn?
gavel
the
with
meeting?
you.
Oh, can I adjourn? I adjourn the meeting.
See you, everybody.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.